of the disabled citizen advocates.
Monica Mishaw, Horizon Employment Specialist.
I am Lauren Gherkin. I'm a senior public policy analyst with the Texas Council for Developmental Disability.
Very good. Thank you all for being here. We have our guests from WorkWest in the back, and Fred can introduce them when his time on the agenda comes up. If that's okay. All right. All right, first order of business is to approve the minutes of our previous meeting, which, gosh almighty, was a long time ago in December of 2023. If I could get a motion to approve those minutes, please.
I approve.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Kathy. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Very good. Thank you all very much. Third item on our agenda, and the primary reason for us gathering today, is to approve, or hopefully make a motion to approve the targets for the measures that we have previously approved. Before I ask for a motion, I want to just say thank you again to the subcommittee, Waka, Jim, Monica, for their effort to finally push through one of the few requirements we have within the statute, and I'm pleased that we finally have a product that I believe is in good order. I also want to thank the folks at WorkWest that provided a lot of the historical data and did a lot of the yeoman work to help kind of close in on what is the best range for these targets for us to use. We also got a lot of good assistance from the data analytics people within TWC, so I appreciate their involvement as well. So that's good. I'll pass that on. With that, I'd ask if there's a motion to approve the measures, or sorry, the targets for the measures, and to recommend their adoption to the commissioners.
So Todd, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the performance measures of the Works Wonders program.
Thank you, Jim. Can I get a second? Sorry. Thank you. Thank you both. Any discussion? Quiet crowd? Perfect. We have a motion and a second, properly moved. All in favor of approving the targets for these performance measures, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, say nay. Any abstention? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you all very much. That takes care of our third item on the agenda. Number 4, Texas Workforce Commission, please. Juan, if you could provide us an update.
Yeah, I've got a couple of items for you. One is that as we've been reporting out, so to speak, during our meetings on our desk reviews for compliance, we were finding, as I've said before, common issues that deal with disability assessments. So we continue to make progress. We're working with WorkWest on working with the CRPs to ensure that we stay in compliance with the disability assessments, and we move away from the old records where we still see some old records where the assessments were done in-house by CRP staff. And so we're working to ensure that we move towards doing those externally through a qualified entity. So we're still see those issues, but we're seeing improvements. We provided, as we did last time, a list of contractors that the woke rehab division uses when they have to go out and utilize a private contractor to do disability assessment. So we provided that list about a year and a half ago, I believe, and we've now provided an updated list of that to be disseminated to the CRPs to help with that. So that's ongoing, and as you may know, we do this desk reviews in relation to a CRP coming up for certification.
Juan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
There are a number of entities that do that provide a disability assessment. The VA does it. Social Security does it. Independent doctors do it. Are some of them not allowed?
No,
Because they
those
could all
are
be-
allowed.
they
Those
could all
are
be
allowed.
different.
No, those are allowed. If you have social security, psychologist, VA, even documentation from a school system, those are allowed. When we talk about doctors, that's slightly complicated. We see sometimes doctor's diagnosis that says Joe here has asthma and nothing more. Or Joe has high blood pressure and nothing more. Well, that may or may not be a disability. And so in those cases, we ask that the CRP work with the doctor to give us more information on how this medical condition is a qualified disability. And oftentimes doctors don't want to take that extra step. And we realize that is a problem, but you can't get around having to have that additional information. So in those cases, we recommend that the CRP go out to a qualified third party to get that information.
And one, on average, how many CIPs are you seeing that are still doing the in-house assessment?
I don't think that we have CRPs using or doing these in-house anymore.
Okay,
What we see is old documentation,
yeah,
and the rules did not grandfather old documentation. So we have to start from scratch. So in cases where we see that, we recommend that they go out and get those rules in there.
thank you.
So one
Can you very briefly define what a qualifying disability is then?
Briefly, it's a disability that is as defined by the American with Disabilities Act.
Okay,
And
that's
so
what I thought.
Yes, so that's what we look for, and that's what we mean when we say a qualified.
Okay, so there's no add-ons or subtractions to that?
No, we go with what that definition calls for.
Okay,
But would it be helpful from a rule standpoint to have some, parameters for a medical professional's documentation to say, in order for a medical professional's documentation to qualify, you had to have these components in whatever documentation you submit, so that you avoid the back and forth with the doctor?
We can certainly consider putting out some technical assistance
Yeah.
to WorkQuest that would give some guidance in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Is there a limit or a time frame to when the disability is diagnosed?
A time frame. I'm sorry, can you?
So if someone is diagnosed, say in elementary school or high school, would it carry over?
That, in terms of a time frame, and I'm gonna reserve the right to check myself on this, but if you're determined disabled, you're disabled from that point forward. So if someone that was determined that have a disability by the school system, I would think that disability might still be there. If it's a learning disability, for instance. So when I said I reserve the right to check myself on that. I'm not an expert in disability determinations. That's why we consult with our local rehab partners. So on a case-by-case basis, if we see something, some documentation, for example, from a school district that was perhaps done when the person was in junior high or a freshman in high school, we would want to consult with our both rehab disability experts to give us guidance in that.
So Juan, you're the expert, I'm not, but I've seen, it really is gray. And there is a lot of opinions in this space. And it's possible for you to be diagnosed as having a disability in grade school or high school. But stuff changes. And you can have surgeries or procedures or things done that all of a sudden you're no longer considered to be disabled. So there isn't not gonna be a list of, okay, you got this, you qualify, because there really is a individual determination that's done by a third-party qualifying person who considers all of these different factors. You could be 20, 40 degree with your eyes, but you could still be considered legally blind because you got all this other things going on. So sometimes we think it's just numbers, but it's not. It's broader than that.
Right, and that's why I'm saying that we take those on a case-by-case basis to make sure that we're just not making a blanket.
Yeah.
Acceptance.
In the event, say, a student, the school psychologist is the one who gives them the diagnosis. And then later on, they go through a secondary assessment and a psychiatrist sees them no longer, they're misdiagnosed. How does that happen?
We would have to look at that on the case, but yeah, on an individual basis, yeah.
Because just for clarification, if they received the documentation in junior high, let's say that was 4 years ago, and now we have a new form, the requirement would be that they have to get recertified on the new form. So even though it was done in junior high, you have to have current paperwork. Is that correct?
Well, there's no form for a disability assessment. It just depends on the documentation that you get by that psychologist or that expert.
So those things are evergreen.
Sorry.
Whatever format it receives in, or you receive it in, as long as it's from a qualified provider, that documentation is evergreen.
Right, that says, that speaks to it. Yes.
I have a concern that I have to express in this discussion in that the Social Security Administration, from my experience with people who've applied for Social Security disability income, that getting a determination of having a disability is very difficult and very costly.
Yep.
So my worry is, and those are qualified experts that are making those costly, difficult determinations. My worry is that those experts could supplant, replace the experts that you're now using or you're now authorizing to use. In other words, how do you keep that restrictiveness out of the process?
Well, if we see a documentation from Social Security, I don't see why we want to supplant that. We take that at face value that the person has been determined disabled.
Well, yeah, but if it's a positive, sure, but what if it's a negative?
Well, I have not seen documentation from Social Security as of this point, I don't know if Kelvin has, that says, all right, you applied for disability and you've been denied. All the documentation that I've seen, it says, here's what your benefit is. we have not seen documentation in the files that says somebody applied and Social Security denied them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I must be wrong.
Well, Jim, I feel like I know what you're asking, and I wanna clarify. So are you asking that if Social Security determines that you're not disabled enough for Social Security benefits, but a doctor determines that you are disabled enough to be a part of the program, is that possible that you can need?
It could be possible because we would not see that documentation from
Okay.
Social Security saying you're not disabled enough.
Okay,
We would not see that. We would see instead the documentation from a qualified third party that this individual went to get certified as disabled. So we would not see two sets of or at least we haven't seen to this point, two sets of documentation. If at some point somebody went to Social Security, applied, doesn't know, but for whatever reasons, they felt that there was some disability, they go elsewhere and to a qualified party and they get certified as disabled, we would take that documentation, at face value, because we would not see the piece from Social Security that said you do not meet the threshold.
As an employer, I wouldn't necessarily present to you documentation that disqualifies the employee. I would present the
yeah.
documentation that qualifies the employee. So,
I didn't want to put it that way.
I'm a practical guy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we have not seen both
Thanks,
sets of documentation.
So one more question. Are you gonna publish a list of the qualified third-party assessors?
Yes, we provided that to WorkWest and they have disseminated that, or allowed to disseminate that to.
It was, the new list was sent out 2 weeks ago. Yes, and I did.
Is it part of the compliance documentation that you're giving out during the seminars?
I know it was an email that came from the general request information email address probably 2 weeks ago.
All right, any other further questions for Juan? Kelvin, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, you covered it. Okay,
Thank
I
you,
got-
gentlemen.
I've got a couple more items.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Thought you were
yeah,
done.
just as an FYI, we are, it's time for the FY 25 WorkWest management fee to be looked at by the commissioners and approved. And we are within the 60-day public comment period that ends in August. Once we compile all the comments, we will put that together in a discussion paper and take it to the commissioners for approval. That would probably be sometime in early to mid-October. And FYI, the proposed management fees have not changed from prior years, 6% for product and services and 5% for temp services. So we're right in the middle of working that up and getting that completed. And the last item,
So Juan.
yeah.
Last year, my comment was, do I think 6% is reasonable or not? I mean, I'm not paying it. State agencies are paying it. I mean, I get paid for the service that I provide or the product that I manufacture and sell. Is it reasonable that we who don't pay it are the determinations, or whether that's a fair and reasonable fee? I mean, it's okay with me, because again, I don't pay it. But I guess my question is, are you looking at the wrong party to tell you it yes or no?
Well, it's the commissioners that will approve that. And we're seeking input from the CRPs with respect to, do you think this is reasonable or not? Because that becomes part of the of the selling price of your product or service. So we're simply asking, do you think that this is a reasonable, add-on to?
My customers haven't pushed back, so my opinion would be not to push back.
You're right, so if you were to submit an opinion, you say, hey, I've got no problem with the fees as they stand.
Ron, what sort of response are you getting from CRPs?
I haven't, reviewed those that have come in, but I think we've had, what, three or four?
that's
Yeah.
that's
And
positive regarding the response.
Just curious how much input you're getting.
Usually we get more response from the performance of requests, that will be large.
All positive.
which is my next item that I was gonna talk about. We will begin, the, process to, evaluate, workers' performance for FY 24, which will end in, August. So, we will begin that probably at the end of, August and start looking at, getting comments back from CRPs and you know, the purchasers and, complete that cycle for FY 24. So we'll be starting that soon. So those are my three items.
Any questions for
All
Walt?
these questions.
On number 3, how is that gonna be getting to the purchasers? Is that gonna be an email to procurement or just it is? Okay.
The state use coordinator, we have a list of state use coordinators for the K, that's who it goes out to.
Do you know when?
Wait,
Do you know approximately when it's gonna be sent?
Hopefully,
Probably
September
the-
first.
Probably the end of August, early September.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Juan or Kel? Thank you, Jim. All right, Fred, the floor is yours for the WorkQuest update.
Thank you all very much. I'm Fred Weber. I'm with WorkQuest, and with me today, I have Al Radford, Marie Richter, and Roxy Van Loo, also from WorkQuest. I also work with Kelvin and Juan. I think we're kind of buddies. I don't know. I want to first of all say I appreciate very much y'all taking the time to go over and do the matrix, the measurements for the Works Wonders program. I think those have needed to be done a long time ago. It always gives us something to shoot for, to look at, to see how we're doing from the standpoint. And really, as y'all's charge are, to make sure that we're doing what need to be doing as far as wages and benefits to the individuals we serve with disabilities. I mean, that's the key to this whole program. So I want to thank y'all for that. And I think moving forward, it'll give us a lot of opportunities to talk about things and how we're doing and keep the program steered in the right direction. So thank you, Juan and Kelvin, and thank you PwC for their input. And I know Kyle worked really hard with the analytical folks at TWC to help come up with those numbers. When looking at the matrix that measure the success of the state programs like wages and employment numbers, Texas continues to be the leader in the nation, providing meaningful employment to people with disabilities. At the last meeting, I gave an overview of the previous fiscal year, so I wanted to provide an update where the program stands at 2024's midpoint. In the first 2 quarters, the fiscal 2024 Works Wonders program employed 4,945 individual with disabilities, which is up from 4,794 at the same point last year. Through the products and services and temporary employment services offered through the program, Those individuals earn 38.9 million in wages and benefits, up from 35.3 million. This includes an increase of nearly $700,000 in benefits, which is 10% over the previous year for the first 2 quarters. The program also employed 1,178 individuals without disabilities who earned 12.2 million in wages and benefits. The program continues to increase the amount paid back to individuals with disabilities. The average hourly wage on Works Wonders contracts increased from $18.39 to $19.77 per hour in quarters 1 and 2, with sales from October 1 to April 30th over 117 million. 33% of the money earned through the program went back to workers with disabilities in the form of wages and benefits. CRPs also continued vocational training and supported employment activities. In the first 2 quarters of FY24, CRPs placed 618 into positions outside of the program. 243 of those individuals had previously worked on Works Wonders contracts. Individuals also experienced upward mobility in the program, with 80 employees with disabilities promoted within the CRPs. 38 of those employees worked on Works Wonders contracts, excuse me. Works Wonders has been expanding, WorkQuest has been expanding the support it provides to CRPs in complying with both contract and program requirements. We have further assisting providing CRPs in vocational training activities and person-centered planning requirements with our newly created vocational rehabilitation specialist position, which was discussed at our last meeting. Our VR specialist, Margie Garcia, a former VR counselor with over a decade of experience in providing direct support for people with disabilities, has been working with CRPs one-on-one to better understand the program requirements and support their employees. Recently, we transitioned our West Texas Region Manager, Brian Powell, to a newly created position of the contract specialist. Before his time at WorkQuest, Brian was executive director of an East Texas CRP. This experience helped him understand the unique challenges CRP face. As a contract specialist, Brian will work with CRPs to successfully fulfill their contract requirements and remain in compliance with the program. This position will help CRPs identify key contract obligations and provide support in monitoring their compliance. He will also train CRPs on state use program requirements and assist CRPs with successfully meeting program objectives. We look forward to another successful year of growth program as we expand employment to individuals with disabilities. Mr. Chairman, that is my report.
Very good, thank you, Fred. Any questions for Fred or the members of his team?
I have a question.
Okay,
It's a softball question.
okay. I need that.
No, I'm good. When I look at the performance measures, I see it looking at direct labor positions, SGA. But in my case, or in probably many people's case, I have a number of people that, for me, are blind, that are inspectors, supervisors, managers, and they're performing in the state use setting or supporting a state use product or something. But I don't think I've been capturing those hours.
Well, so most of the reference to the program under Chapter 122 references direct labor. I mean, that's really what we're looking at. Although when we do cost analysis sheets and such, we do capture the fact that if you're using disabled labor under indirect labor, it is a consideration when we give it to Juan and Kelvin about when they're looking at individual contracts for set aside. So as we look at that, as you're setting it aside, you know, that is taken into consideration from the standpoint of the product itself. But I would say that most of the reference to what's in chapter 122 does specifically talk to the fact about we're looking at direct labor.
So these performance metrics are really, they are direct labor, except for the last one, number 6, or number 5.
And the talking about the career counseling, training and professional developments and such. Yes, sir.
So I told you it was a softball.
Well, it really wasn't that big or something.
Any other questions for Fred?
So I am always interested, and I think I talked about this a year ago, I feel like, but I'm always interested in like retention rates, individuals, and you gave us a lot of really good information just now, so maybe I skipped it in my brain, but I would love to learn more about, the retention rates of individuals and whether or not paying them minimum wage or higher, like how big of an issue has that been really? When you bring someone in and, have there been any issues about, well, you're not meeting the standards, so we're gonna have to find employment elsewhere and support that, or any applicants for waivers to be able to keep paying minimum wage. Do you have any of those numbers?
I'm gonna throw a softball question back to Jim and, here in a minute and ask him about, and Plaid a little bit about their retention ratio. We don't, that's not something that we normally, track, with their, but let me go on move on with your question. We have eliminated sub-minimum wage in the contract. We have no CRPs that pay under state use contracts that pay less than sub-minimum wage. Our individual hourly wages continue to go up. It's 1977 as I reported. And I think, at the federal minimum wage, I think we have that being said, we're well above the 720, the 725 as a minimum. But from answering your question, that the retention ratio is not something that I necessarily, but I mean, that we haven't really, been asked to track.
Sure.
So I would have to divert that to y'all. I think at a time, I think, from the standpoint of the salaries and that, I think our CRPs are competitive, with their rates and such. So I'm gonna ask y'all about
I
that.
do the inverse of the retention, which is for me is the turnover rate. My
Okay.
turnover rate is 14%.
Okay.
That's disabled, not disabled, blindsided, doesn't matter. My overall turnover rate is 14%. But I do have a question for Juan and Fred. This is just a question, not a softball. But I read that in front of Congress right now, there's a proposed legislation to address the cash cliff problem. And what they're proposing is for every $2 that you make over your SGA limit, that they will reduce your SSI or SSDI benefit by $1. Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard that specific amount and that number, but quite frankly, I mean, I know that I've heard of talk about that as well as for the past. Lauren may know more about that than I do.
Are you talking about the Transformation and Competitive Employment Act?
I have no idea.
Alright, I can look into that, Jim, and email you about it.
Perfect.
And so there is a, act, going through right now that is talking about, competitive and integrated employment. But let me make sure that is in from the legislation that I'm thinking of, and can get back to you.
It's my understanding that that's the way it works with Social Security. So if you're drawing Social Security and you're still working, for every every $2 that you make over some number, they reduce your social security benefit by $8. And they're thinking about applying that to the SSI or SSDI computation or whatever. Let's just play that that's true. That will have a dramatic impact on our employees. A lot of people work part-time for the sole reason of staying under those limits, under the SGA
Sure.
limits. Now, all of a sudden, if I can make more and work more, make more, then all of a sudden, some of those caps, undesirable caps, many times, that'll go away. Or will be significantly reduced. So that's a pretty interesting potential legislation or whatever it is that's out there.
So, like, did y'all hear about that? Did they talk about that at all?
Just that it's not that specific, but just that they're looking at the benefits, but and that, you know, it's a bipartisan issue. So
But it's getting bipartisan support, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As far as my agency, or our agency in Fort Worth, we haven't had an individual working on a 14C certificate since, gosh, probably 15 years ago or more. And I haven't had any real change in retention or turnover since then. It stays around a similar percentage, right? Between 10-15%, depending on the year and circumstances. So I would say that in my case, there's been no material impact from the elimination of 14C.
mhm.
All right, any other questions for Brett? Brett, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Kelly, do we have anybody registered for public comment today?
No one for public comment.
Then my fellow committee members, I'll invite a motion to adjourn. So move. Second. Somebody second. Thank you all very much for being here. It's great to have you all on the table. So thank you.
Yeah.
Smile.